was either Ritschl or Trelch. I can't remember who it was. It was either Ernst Ritschl or, well, what's the difficulty of Augustine? I think there are a couple difficulties. And again, this is a very peculiar view to me. I think I'm not trying to claim solitary credit for it. I'm just trying to excuse anybody else. I think Augustine was writing his work in the assumption that any world that received his work would broadly be continuous with the world that he inhabited. He didn't really imagine that the world of the Roman Empire would end in that way. He didn't really imagine the apocalypse. He imagined, and maybe this is the case of any of us, we can only imagine an audience that is like the audience that we live around. He imagined that future people who would read his things would be a lot like him, or like the people he knew. He knew that the times were changing. He knew that he was entering into Christendom, and that previous theologians had been outside of that. There was going to be a world that was very heavily organized and saturated by Christian culture in a certain way. And he knew that the marks of authentic Christian existence had often been defined in terms of opposition to the dominant culture, through martyrdom, through monasticism, through a number of these practices. And he knew that that wasn't going to be acceptable in the future. It wasn't going to be a viable route, right? You'll produce a series of people like Soren Kierkegaard, who are brilliant, but in some ways, the only way they think they can demonstrate their Christianity is by continually offending everybody. That may be the right case. I'm not saying it's wrong, but Augustine tried to imagine a way of being authentically Christian, which would always put you a little bit in tension with the dominant structures of the culture. Because the culture was always going to try to normalize and render routine what Augustine thought was never a normal and routine thing. If you actually wake up every morning and think the world is a gift, that's not something that you can become calloused to. You have to retain that freshness of insight. And he knew that everything about human culture works to routinize us and to organize us into patterns and habits of action. And he's not against patterns and habits of action. My God, civilization would collapse. But the difficulty is that if we confuse religion and confuse our true faith, for Augustine, with routine, we will never be like the people we are called to be. We should be in a condition of exhilarated astonishment to some degree. And the church, for centuries thereafter, tried to figure out how to institutionalize that insight. And the difficulty is, it seems to me, it's effectively a non-institutionalizable insight. And that's why it kept trying to forget Augustine at the same time that it tried to domesticate